นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนัมมัสสามิ Blessings to everybody who's joined us today. Here in Melbourne, we're now in the season of spring. So we've experienced lockdown in the winter, now we're experiencing lockdown in the spring. And this is the way of the world, with the differing seasons, brings new experiences, different kinds of change to our environment. So one thing the spring brings is a lot of new growth in vegetation, animals in nature, they're having their offspring. So in the monastery we have to do what we call fire clearance, clearing up of twigs and branches and leaves around the buildings to make a fire break and do more pruning and weeding for the summer when there's a danger of bushfire. And it always reminds me of our mind. We have to do the same with our mind, and not just once a year in the spring, but on a daily basis we have to practice weeding out our mind of all the negative, unskillful mental states that we like to hoard and accumulate, and then they cause us trouble. Which is why we practice meditation regularly, is to help develop that strength of mindfulness so that we can do that job of cleaning out the mind. Another thing that springtime in Australia brings is more people go outdoors, even though we still have lockdown, but they go out swimming. So you hear more stories about people seeing sharks and even getting attacked by sharks sometimes. So we also have to look out for the sharks elsewhere in our life, the sharks in our kitchen, in our lounge, which are also the sharks of the mind, those negative mind states that lead us to use our speech or our actions sometimes to hurt other people, sometimes even hurt ourselves. So at this time we're doing a lot of weeding and shark control. And this is just one way of talking about meditation. You're learning how to get down to the root cause of our suffering as human beings and weed out, clear out the mind and protect the mind from all those thoughts and intentions that are harmful to us. And even if you only dedicate a little bit of practice, time for practice every day, even if it's only 10 or 15 minutes, that has a cumulative effect over a period of weeks, months, years. You'll find your general level of mindfulness and awareness, self-awareness improves through the practice. And it's the place where all kinds of other good qualities will arise. The mind that is nourished by the practice of mindful awareness and giving wise consideration to your own states of mind, your own life, learning about yourself, why you feel stressed, where happiness comes from, where suffering comes from. I would say maybe this is the most valuable thing you can learn as a human being. It's what defines us as a human being, because animals certainly can't do this. They can't meditate, they can't develop the Noble Eightfold Path or realize the Dhamma that the Buddha taught. They find it very difficult to do anything good at all. Not impossible. Occasionally you hear of animals doing some useful act to help somebody or help each other, but generally speaking, they can't make much merit, wouldn't make much good karma, whereas human beings can. But to make good karma and train ourselves, develop ourselves in the way of the Dhamma takes effort, patient effort, and regular, continuous effort. Where I used to live in Thailand, the teachers talk about our mind as like, when we begin the practice, it's like an untamed or a wild animal that's caught from the forest. And traditionally in Asia, when the forests, the jungles were larger, people would go into the jungle to trap particularly those animals that could be useful. So something like an elephant in the old days would be used for cartage, to carry goods and drag logs and do useful services for humans. I remember one time, maybe 30 years ago, when I was staying on the Burmese border in the jungle, talking to one man who is a very poor villager, but one of the ways he made his living was trapping elephants. And he said the way he trapped an elephant from the jungle was dig a big pit and cover it over with leaves and branches and try and tempt the elephant maybe with some food to come walking that way, and then it would fall into the pit. And it'd make the pit so deep the elephant couldn't climb out of it. And he said the first few days he just stayed away from the elephant, so the elephant had to starve for a few days. But that was because it was so dangerous, so wild, it would kill anybody around it, and they're so powerful. So the people would just stay away from the elephant. But after a few days without food, it would calm down a bit, and then they could approach it and start feeding it, getting it to know them, getting to know their smell, their look, and feed the elephant, give it water. And gradually they started to tame it and train it until eventually they could bring it out of the pit and use the elephant to drag logs or sell it to someone else who would use it. And this was how he made his money. But we were laughing together. I was saying, the human mind, much like this elephant, isn't it? As soon as you come to train in the Dhamma, whether it's practicing dana or keeping precepts or practicing mindfulness or meditating, in the first period you notice how wild and unruly your mind is. So they always say you have to starve your mind a bit. And that's why we practice meditation like this sometimes. We sit down, sit still, close our eyes, cross our legs, and we decide for a period of time, I'm not going to move or get up. Whatever I think, however I feel, I'm just going to learn to be patient with that and mindful and accepting. You have to accept yourself when you practice meditation, because you won't immediately feel peaceful, and you'll see a lot of maybe negativity or distraction or foolishness coming up in your mind. You have to accept that's your starting point. But just like the elephant, you have to starve all those negative, unskillful states of mind. You don't feed them. So you sit and you watch, and you use the breath as your anchor, and you fix your mind on the breath. But just because you're doing that doesn't mean to say your mind will immediately go quiet. Many people have different attitudes towards the practice of meditation, and some people think it's just a waste of time. They think you're not being very productive, not helping anybody, not doing anything useful for anyone. But of course, for those who have practiced it, they'll realize they're being very productive. It's just in a very subtle way. You're producing mindfulness, you're producing wisdom, you're producing compassion, which are the qualities that are the most useful for the world and in short supply. It's just you can't see them. You're not producing anything physical when you're sitting still, but you're still working hard and producing something. Or other people begin their meditation with great ideals, and they think, I don't want a single thought bothering me. I don't want to remember anything or think about anything. My mind has to be totally calm with the breath, totally empty or blissful. But of course it doesn't work either. thoughts start to bubble up. You feel restless, you feel some negative thoughts, you have some pain or sensations in your body. It's not like the ideal. So that sense of acceptance is vital in the beginning, and then starving the mind of the negativity. You're making that determination and that decision, even if I do have angry thoughts arise or worries or fears or some kind of desire, I'm not going to feed it. I'm not going to hold on to it and keep thinking it. So you have to get the attitude right as you practice the Dhamma. Of course, negative, unskillful states of mind, the weeds and the sharks, they'll come up. But the important thing is to have the right attitude in your practice and in your mind when you meet them. And to train yourself in acceptance and then letting go. If we don't get the attitude right, then we tend or can make more suffering than we had in the first place. And Buddhists and meditators are not immune from that. If you're too idealistic, then of course every thought, every sound, everything that disturbs you becomes a problem. And you very quickly can become disappointed with yourself, blame yourself, or blame the cause of whatever it is you're thinking about. So blame someone at work, or blame your teacher, or blame your spouse, or your child, or your neighbor, whatever. Because in the beginning our mind is like that. It's untrained, it's restless like the elephant. You have to starve it. Don't feed those negative thoughts. That takes effort, right effort, the effort to prevent unskillful thoughts arising, or if they have arisen, the effort to abandon them, let them go as quickly as possible. So you have to get that principle established. And the other way we deal with that is bringing up the skillful thoughts, bringing up the mindfulness, putting effort into putting attention on the breath. That is developing mindfulness, developing a sense of calm, goodwill for oneself, for others. And this combination of abandoning the unskillful and cultivating the skillful over time will bring the desired result. The mind will settle down, we'll have more clarity, more peace, and the mind is ready to take on and understand even more Dhamma, more truths that are often hard to see, hard to know. So getting the attitude right in our practice is important, because we often forget that, and we bring the same old attitudes into our Dhamma practice and our meditation as we do when we go to work or when we're at home. The complaints, the worries, the insecurities, the anger, the greed, it's all there in the back of our mind from our old conditioning. And even in our practice of meditation, we can unwittingly feed it if we're not very aware, not very mindful. So the practice of mindfulness, the Buddha often compared it to like holding up a mirror or looking at your reflection in water. You're trying to bring up the right qualities, the mindfulness, the awareness, the clear comprehension, so that you can see yourself, see this body, this mind more clearly in the present moment as it is right now, right here, right now. And just like a mirror in your house or somewhere, mirrors get dusty, they get dirty over time, so you have to keep cleaning them in order to see. So the regular practice of mindfulness is part of that process of cleaning the mirror so that you can see yourself more clearly. But it's not enough, we have to use wisdom as well. As you notice, sometimes you look in the mirror, when you're looking at yourself, you're usually looking at your physical appearance, your dress, your hair, the way your face looks and so on. But even then, you'll notice if you become more mindful when you're looking in a mirror, out of habit and out of desire, we tend to focus on what we like often. So if there's a part of our body or our appearance we don't like, we often ignore it. So if we don't like our nose, then we'll look at our hair. If we don't look at our hair, we'll look at our teeth. If we don't like our nose or our teeth or our hair, we'll look at our clothes. As human beings, we can be like that. We'll focus on what we like and ignore what we don't like, because Maybe we have these ideals and desires of how we feel we should be, what we want to be, who we think we are. And even when you're looking in a mirror and you have the opportunity to see everything with complete balance and equanimity, the beauty, the ugliness, the strengths, the blemishes, the good bits, the bad bits. We have that opportunity, but even then we often don't do it correctly yet because of our accumulated biases and attachments and opinions. So one of the things we do is we tend to overlook our faults and the negative bits because we don't like them. We push them to one side and we focus just on what we like about ourselves or the way we look. And in meditation we can do the same. So as soon if you're meditating and your aim is to be peaceful, then often we'll try and suppress anything that's not peaceful in our mind, in our thinking, get rid of it, push it away, deny it. And often that makes it worse. It only comes up all the more. It's like, when you have children and you tell them not to do something, often that only makes their mind attach even more to that thing they're not supposed to do, and they want to do it even more. Or if you're trying to diet and you say, oh, don't eat the cakes, the more you say don't eat the cakes, the more your mind wants to eat them because you're bringing your attention to the very thing you're trying to stop. Meditation is like that. If you become too idealistic and fixed on how you feel you should be or how you want your mind to be, then the things that are not meeting with your ideal will become a problem very quickly. So we have to learn how to accept ourselves. That doesn't mean to say just give in and let everything happen, but you have to also have this sense of acceptance. If a negative thought comes up, you have to accept it. Okay, I've got angry, or I'm feeling jealous or resentful, or I've got a lot of obsessive greed that's bothering me at this moment, or I'm just sleepy and tired. Whatever experience you're having, part of the practice of mindfulness, and mindfulness of breathing, is just knowing that experience, getting to the point where you can know it as it is with equanimity and not feed it or make it worse or create extra suffering out of that very experience that you're becoming mindful of. If you're truly mindful, then you'll just know it. You'll know an angry thought as an angry thought. And there won't be that taking up of that thought as me, mine, myself, and identifying with it. If mindfulness is clear and pure and present, then it's possible to know an angry thought or a worry as just an angry thought, as just a worry. A painful feeling in your leg is just a painful feeling when mindfulness is clear and there and present. But as we lose our mindfulness, which is another of the problems we have to face, well, of course, then the sense of self and attachment forms again, the desires come up, and we're back with the mind that is always desiring, wanting to get something, wanting to get rid of something. So we have to have a lot of patience with this sense of goodwill and acceptance underlying our practice of meditation. This is why the Buddha encouraged us to practice, we could say, making merit every day through our lives, because all the different practices we call making merit, and there's so many of them, but the general idea of bringing up and developing skillful means in our daily life, in the way we act, the way we speak, the way we think, helps to support this tricky and difficult job of weeding out the sharks of the mind, getting rid of them, blocking them, letting them go, because it's tiring and we often will fail. We're mindful for a moment, for a while, and then the thoughts flood in and we feel, oh, I've failed, I've let my anger come into my mind, take over again. Here I am worrying again. We're having to learn to pick ourselves up off the floor over and over again. This is why my teachers used to talk about meditation as like a boxing match. Learning meditation in Thailand, you're surrounded by a country that likes boxing and watching boxing. And it's not just the men. If you ever have a championship fight on, sometimes even the women will watch, because it's a cultural thing as well. But it's a very good analogy for the training of the mind. Boxing, one person hits the other, and the other hits back, and you block, and you fight, and you hit, and you're getting tired, and sometimes people fall over, and then they pick themselves up. It's like that with the practice of working with these unskillful states of mind. Sometimes the Dhamma is on top, and we become strong. Mindfulness is strong, clarity is there, we're letting go, we're on top of it. And then suddenly the next moment, Mara or the mental defilements or these unskillful states of mind, they're on top and they come fighting back again, just like our opponent in the boxing ring, comes out stronger than before, and we're being pummeled, and we've got to be very patient at that moment and not give up and not give in. So although it seems a little bit extreme, mentally, a lot of the time that's what's going on. It's a battle between good and evil in your own mind, the negative and the positive, the skillful, the unskillful. But of course, like any champion, like a boxer or like anyone else in sport or anything competitive, you're learning. You're learning what skills, what supports your practice, your training, what supports the arising of mindfulness, what supports the letting go of the unskillful dhammas. So part of our training is this practice of making merit every day. So the Buddha encourages, practice dana, generosity every day, find ways to help the people around you, support the Sangha, support those in need in society, and also just support the people around you in your family, your friends, colleagues at work. Practice dana every day because it's already training the mind. You might not, when you practice dana, generosity, you're not sitting up with your eyes closed. I mean, you could do that. You can practice a lot of generosity, developing generous intentions while you're meditating. It's one form of meditation. But generally we're practicing dana as a physical activity or through our speech, in the way we talk to people. We can practice generosity. Generosity of heart is shown when we speak to people, showing kindness, giving instructions. You can practice generosity on a mobile phone. Make an online donation or something, or you can share information with somebody who needs some advice or instruction. It can be through our speech, it can be through texting, it could be through our actions, physically doing something to help somebody, volunteering, whatever. But regularly practicing generosity is developing this, what we call the wholesome state of mind, the meritorious state of mind that uplifts us through our day, gives us a source of goodness that we can fall back on during those periods when our practice of mindfulness slips and some of those unskillful states return. The mind still has some goodness in it and can come back to that goodness quite quickly, even if we have a fall and we're caught into a state of anger, aversion, worry, fear, greed. For someone who's never practiced generosity, they've missed out on that and they don't know the happiness of sharing, of giving. So it's something the Buddha said is a direct support to our practice of mindfulness and meditation. It's practice sharing, giving every day. When you're giving, sharing in smaller or bigger ways, what are you doing? You're letting go of something. The best kind of giving is that you're letting go of something you really like. Something you really want, something you really need, something you really like and attach to. That would be the best kind of dana to practice. Give something away that you really value. Because you're teaching yourself in that moment to let go of an attachment, and you're teaching yourself, I can survive without this. This is an important thing to see, and to see regularly. I don't need all this food. If you're eating a meal, share some of that meal with somebody. I don't need all my money. I can share some of it with someone else. I don't need all my time. I can share my time with someone else, do something that's useful for others. There's so many ways we can do this, but the more you practice, the more you realize the important thing is to share, and particularly in ways that you wouldn't, your kilesas, your greed, your attachment wouldn't like you to. It's that voice in the back of the mind that's saying, don't do that. Don't give that away. Don't go and help them. Don't waste your time doing that. The doubt, the voice of doubt or the voice of attachment, greed, comfort. Often to practice dana, we need to go out of our comfort zone. We need to get up earlier to do dana. We need to go that extra mile to go somewhere, do something, put more effort. It requires effort to practice dana. But this is a very powerful karmic conditioning. And it's practicing letting go in a way that is not really any different from when you're sitting meditation, letting go of some attachment that's in your mind. The hardest kind of dana to do is probably abhaya dana, practicing forgiveness. And you see that, the value of that at this time, during lockdown, when people are spending much more time together at home. People who have never spent more than a few minutes at home talking to each other over many years, suddenly they got hours and hours and hours together in the same house, same apartment, and seeing the same faces every day. This is an excellent opportunity to practice abhaya dana, forgiveness, giving forgiveness for your partner's faults, for your children's faults, for your siblings' faults, for their behaviors, for their different opinions, for their different habits, all the kind of things that come up in your mind when you're living together. You notice things, don't you? You notice what they do that's different than what you do, what they say that's different from you, their different habits. For some people, they've been saying it's almost like rediscovering their family members because they spend so much time out at work, socializing in different places or at school. Now together, suddenly you see what your partner or your flatmate is like and you didn't realize before. This is a time to teach yourself. You don't get caught into that habit. The negative habit will focus on what's wrong with your partner or your flatmate and say, they don't do this, they don't do that. All the complaints and negativity comes up in your mind. But now you have to be skillful. One who practices the Dhamma is trying to be clever and skillful in the Dhamma. And that means you have to forgive. Accept the way they are. Forgive yourself, just as you forgive yourself in your own meditation when you notice negativity, faults. When you look in the mirror and you see those blemishes, you forgive yourself, you accept it. You have to do the same with those people you're living with. We can't expect to practice the Dhamma and always get the conditions we like, be on retreat or in our own space. We share this world with other people, other creatures, and so we have to learn how to live with forgiveness. They always say one of the ways they describe the noble ones, those who have realized the Dhamma, whether it's a stream winner or a once returner, non-returner, arahant, they live with an attitude of forgiveness. They give safety to the people they live with, so it means, however angry I get with you, I'm not going to hurt you and harm you, and I'm going to accept you and I'm going to forgive you, even if you're doing negative things that impact on my life, I'm still going to forgive you. Why? Because we're learning to look after our own mind, to weed out the weeds, to get rid of the sharks. Otherwise, the opposite tends to happen is the conflicts increase, the complaints increase, the negativity increases in our own mind and in the minds of others around us. And it's just as infectious as coronavirus. If one person is always being negative, it's very hard not to follow suit. And so if one person in the house or the workplace is complaining, well, soon that will be 2 or 3 or 4. Then what happens is we tend to split, so you get groups and factions. So there'll be 1 or 2 who have some shared interests, so they'll be okay together, but then they'll gang up against some other group and they'll look down on them and complain about them behind their back. And you see that in almost every workplace in the world. There'll be one little group that forms, and as soon as the other group is out of the room, the first group are backstabbing, complaining about them. This is exactly where we're practicing the Dhamma, learning to be mindful of mind, thoughts, speech, actions. And one of the greatest kinds of merit making is the practice of forgiveness, abhaya dana, giving of forgiveness, giving of safety to others. And it comes back to you. All the good karma we make, the merit we practice, uplifts your mind, buoys your mind, brings you more of a sense of ease, well-being, the happier you are. And this is particularly vital, as I was saying earlier, when you're practicing meditation, developing mindfulness, dealing with the tricky states of mind, with the elephant mind that just wants to go on a rampage. We need a lot of effort, patience, mindfulness and wisdom to deal with that. But the dharana you practice on a regular basis, which often is a little easier than the training in mindfulness and meditation, that dharana will help support you in developing good feeling in yourself, in others, developing the attitude of letting go, the attitude of forgiveness, to the point where maybe it's just your default attitude. You turn the computer on, all the programs are there, you practice the Dhamma, you practice your dana, your sila, your bhavana, straight away your mind is with the attitude of forgiveness, even when you're encountering difficult people, difficult situations. The more you do it, the better you get at it, the more natural it becomes. It becomes more natural to forgive rather than to seek revenge. And you never know, things are uncertain, so there may always be some situation or some person who still can provoke us, make us lose our temper, but generally the practice of the Dhamma, it's a cumulative thing. If you practice this every day, dana, sila, bhavana, you're going to get better at it, and it's going to have its conditioning effect on your mind, to the point where states of peace are more normal than states of disturbance. States of happiness are more normal than states of depression, disappointment, anger. States of clarity where your wisdom faculty can function become more normal than states of confusion, fuzziness, lack of clarity. So this is what we're aiming for in our practice, through a regular practice, developing this ability to train the human mind, train it, starve it of what it deludedly, foolishly wants, greed, anger, delusion, and the objects of greed, anger, and delusion. We're starving it of that, and we're feeding it the Dhamma, the generosity, the kindness, the morality, the mindfulness, the wisdom. We feed it that. After a while, that elephant that's been trapped and kept in the pit and been going wild for a few days, eventually it starts to calm down, and eventually the guy can actually bring it out of the pit and use it to do good things, like drag logs and carry things for him. And that's what we're learning to do with our own mind. So maybe I've said enough for the moment today. I wish you all well in your practice, and now I'll give a chance if there's anyone who wants to ask some questions.